Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Football Experience, brought to you by On the Pod. I'm here with Caleb. How you doing?
Yeah, I'm not too bad, man. A little bit under the weather, but here and happy to be talking about what we've seen over the weekend in the footballing world. How are you doing, man?
Yeah, not too bad. I'm feeling a lot better than you. Like I went and worked out yesterday, so I'm still feeling those like adrenaline hormones still going through me. Now, I was listening to Talksport yesterday, and I'm gonna start this off with like a really weird topic, so I won't jump straight into football. They they brought up, okay, so a hypothetical, in what's, can you think of a sport where having an extra arm or a leg would be a disadvantage, and like it's a fully functioning arm or leg, and like they couldn't think of like any sport where it would be a disadvantage, because like you think of football having an extra leg, you can defend better, you can even shoot better, you have extra stretch, or being a goalie with an extra arm. In basketball, having an extra arm, you can defend better. So like, I just found it like a hilarious topic, and like
Yeah,
just
I'm
off
trying
this,
to think.
yeah.
Have you got any?
Well, they did. Some people did call in, and they mentioned cycling, because like, where do you put the third leg? I think it was Goldstein. He said you just put it down the middle on like that middle bar. Like you just
Just rest
you
it.
just have it resting. But like the aerodynamics of it, probably, I'm not sure where it'll work out or not.
Yeah,
Another one
true.
mentioned diving as well, because you have an extra body part, so it would like
That's a good one.
potentially make an
That's a
extra
good one.
splash. Yeah, so
Because my thinking when you asked that was, what sports do you need to make yourself as small as possible and like limit what space you take up, and diving is a good one because you want to make as little splash as possible when you're into the water.
yeah, but other than those, like I literally cannot think of any that would be like a physical
Tough one.
disadvantage. Yeah, like I really don't know.
You have to let me stew on that one.
Yeah, it's probably one to come back at the end of the podcast, or even in the next episode. But like,
Yeah, it'll be the next one.
the most hilarious one that they mentioned though, like that would be like an advantage, or like triple jump. You just jump off each leg.
Oh, that's good.
But yeah, like, I just can't think of any, and like it's, but then obviously you get into like the into the, I guess, the physics of it. Like, is the arm placed like in the middle of your chest, or is it placed like
Oh, yeah.
on top of or below your left or right arm? Where is the left leg placed? Is it placed like literally in the middle, or is it placed like on the side? But like, for argument's sake, it's a fully functioning arm or leg placed in the most appropriate place for said sport. I suppose so. But yeah, it's definitely an interesting conundrum.
Definitely. I think we should get people leaving comments.
Yeah, like,
What
yeah,
they think.
leave a comment what you think, and like, even like an interesting one where you think it would be an advantage. Like we mentioned, like football, being a goalie, European handball as well, like being a
Yeah,
goalie,
definitely.
or just having an extra limb just hanging about. All right, all right. We're gonna get into it. At the end, we'll see if we've come up with any sports, but we're gonna get into the action from the Premier League this weekend, and we'll start off with Arsenal Manchester United. Now, do you want to give your thoughts on it first?
Yeah, sure. I reckon my big takeaway from this game, two big takeaways. I thought United were actually pretty decent, but made mistakes in critical moments and got punished for every mistake they made, pretty much every major mistake they made. But that's the best I've seen United look in a while now. And the second one was just, I was watching throughout the game, and what I was thinking was just how dislikable this Arsenal side is for me. Oh, with Arteta leading it, there's something about them that just winds me up. The way Arteta complained and he was going over to the ref as he was going to the VAR screen and riling up the crowd behind the VAR screen to get a reaction while he was looking at it. The way I think in the last game, he's doing his little sarcastic, arrogant sort of way he talks to the fourth official. And then obviously we can go back to the interview about thank you so much to the Premier League for putting this game as the early game. And then the way all the players and Arteta celebrated a penalty miss, I just thought it was over the top. I thought it was like a moment, like not as much obviously, but the commentator said it how like we look at that and we're kind of going back to the Keown on Van Nistelrooy sort of incident. Obviously not to that effect, but I get it. Yeah, you're relieved that the penalty's not been converted, but you didn't effectively save it. You didn't force the mistake. It was a miss. He missed the penalty. So I was like, yeah, we're relieved, but they were celebrating like he saved the World Cup winning final penalty. And I know I've seen it, and like Arsenal have been criticised of this in recent weeks, but and I know I've seen like, oh, so we're just going to stop players from celebrating. For me, it speaks to as something deeper, which is just the level that this Arsenal team are on, because really, yeah, it's a crucial win against United, but I mean, we're celebrating those wins against Villa like we've won a trophy. We're celebrating this win or this missed penalty against United. It's just like, come on, guys, like put your head down, finish this game, which they did, but that third goal shouldn't have counted anyway. And we could talk about a lot of catalogue of controversy in this game because I thought United were very unlucky. And fair play to Arteta in his post-match press interview. He said we did have luck today. So fair play. He addressed that because they had a lot of luck in that game. And obviously in football you need luck sometimes, but often you see it get balanced out. This was one of those days that just went for Arsenal, I felt, but I don't know that Arteta in this Arsenal team. While I acknowledge he's doing a decent job, I'm not talking about the job he's doing in terms of points on the board and position in the league table, and even the way the team's playing most of the time. But just to see those kind of reactions and his attitude, it winds me up. It really does. So I don't know. I'm going to give you the floor to come to the defense of your side and your manager.
Well, look, you bring up some interesting points, and I guess your view is that of a neutral, essentially. So mine, I'll try to remove as much bias as I can from it. Now, if I'm looking at other managers that are as what's the word? Animated that are as animated on the touchline as Arteta. Like you can obviously bring up your Conte, your Simeone. Klopp is pretty animated. I think Klopp
100%.
Yeah, and Klopp even goes out onto the pitch and like stares down the opposition team while they're warming up. Like no one else does that either. And like Guardiola as well, I'm going to throw him in there. And I'm sure there's other managers in other leagues that I might not watch as much, but they're all as animated, if not more animated. And for instance, you said that it's starting to bug you with Arteta. Like there's moments where when Klopp does it really bugs me. Like it really gets under my skin. And I suppose you can say, as a manager of his team, isn't he doing the right thing then by getting the opposition, agitated like that with his antics and stuff?
Before you go on, which moments? And I'm just like one that sticks in your head where Klopp's annoyed you with his animation on the touchline, because I definitely agree with your point about how all these top managers are very animated, or most of them are very animated. Like Conte's not very animated until his team scores a goal, and then he's very animated most of the time. And then, yeah, they all show it in different ways though. So my point is, it's the way that Arteta shows his animation is the thing that doesn't sit right. Not that he shows animation.
Yeah, no, look. I guess different personalities, different actions. They sit right with some people. They don't sit right with other people. And
Yeah.
and again, I'll bring up the point that since you're not an Arsenal fan, you're looking at it with a different lens, which is completely fine. The most recent one that just automatically comes to mind is Klopp with against Arsenal. I think in the first at Anfield in the first tie that they had of the season, where I'm pretty sure like Mane's look. I'm gonna bring this up later on, but he's known for pretty much, at least from what I've seen, almost every single game he goes up for a challenge that like Trent puts in a crossfield ball to him, and he goes up for a challenge against the right back, and he always puts an elbow into the face. Like he does it almost every single game that I've watched, and he's never punished for it. And he did it to, I'm not sure if it was Tommy. I think it was Tommy Asu who was playing. I don't think he was injured at that time, and obviously Arteta, like he's calling for more protection and stuff from the referee, and then Klopp's like obviously chimes in and starts getting animated, and then that whole touchline bust up occurs, and then gets the whole Anfield crowd riled up as well. But like that's an instance where Klopp went over the top first, and then obviously Arteta tried to respond and tried to get right or wrong, tried to give back what Klopp dished out first.
Well,
that's the first one that comes to mind.
And obviously we both support those clubs, so it's very hard for us each to take the bias out of it. But my problem with Arteta's action in that instance was not even the way he was showing animation. It was actually the fact that he was showing animation, because that was such a stupid thing to do at Anfield to rile up the crowd. And I'm pretty sure that actually had an effect on the game and how it went for the next 10, 15 minutes after that incident. So
Possibly.
My issue with that one was I thought his actions were fine. I didn't really take any offense in terms of him being sarcastic or him having this arrogant attitude. I just thought that was him wanting a decision. Managers do that. But the fact that he went about it against Klopp, and obviously the 50,000+ at Anfield have got to defend their manager because we love our manager because he's done such great things for us. I just thought that was a poor decision to make at the time. So if anything, it's that hot-headedness in that moment when you've got to keep your cool.
Yeah, and like I 100% agree with that. And like that, if Arteta was more experienced, and if we had a more experienced squad, especially, they would have actually reacted better to overcome that whole Anfield crowd and everything. Like for instance, if that was a Mourinho Chelsea, that would have actually motivated the team even more. Whereas a young Arsenal squad with a young manager, it's going to go against you, 8 or 9 times out of 10. Maybe in a couple of years' time, like in 2-3 years' time, as these players are in their mid-20s, some are in their late 20s, then you might get a different response from the same type of action. So while I don't mind the action, I think that the timing of it was, and everything around it that I mentioned with the age of the squad, the experience of the squad, look, in hindsight, it's easy to say it wasn't the right one, but it's probably pretty much the first time that I've seen a manager try and stand up and try to give something back to Klopp, which was, for me, whether it was Arsenal or like whether it was Arteta or a different manager, it's good to see that. Simeone, I think he tries to give back to every manager, but like he's known for it. Now,
the one that sticks to mind is Lampard a couple seasons back when we won the title in the empty Anfield. So you're hoping that Arteta is longer lived than that.
Yeah, look, I think it's definitely like something that Arteta and the team will take as a learning experience. So we'll see. Yeah. We'll see whether it's repeated next season or not. Now, you also mentioned like you thought United played better in this game, and like I'll agree, but I only think that they only played better in the second half. and especially leading up to the penalty, they were on top of us, and we were definitely riding our luck. And the first half, I think we controlled it enough, and I think that their goal came a little bit against the run of play, like not totally against the run of play, but a little bit against it, because like we just scored our second goal. It seemed like we were gaining some momentum, and then bam, bloody Cristiano Ronaldo pops up and score. Like it was pretty poorly defended. In all honesty, like Ramsdale should have come out. Either he should have come out, or Gabriel should have actually went to defend the ball, but he went to defend the man, which was a poor decision. You also mentioned the Xhaka goal, that you thought that it was offside, and look, I watched like the post match and how they bring in like a previous referee and everything like that, or like and the ref mentioned that because I think it was Lindelof, because he was in front of Nketiah, like he was directly in front of Nketiah, then it sort of, that's the reason why it wasn't given offside, because even if Nketiah wasn't there, his own player was impeding the vision of the ball anyway. I think that was the argument that they were making, and I can see that. I can see if it wasn't given, I can definitely see that that argument. Like, obviously Nketiah was in that line, but I can see why it was given, because there was a United player that was directly in front of Nketiah who was also blocking the vision, so it wouldn't really matter. But overall, those United came out a little bit similar in the second half to how they came out against Liverpool, where they tried to gain a little bit more control of the game and started to play a little bit better for those first 15, 20 minutes. They seem to have that in them, but after that, especially after that penalty, they definitely fell apart. And all I can say is, why wasn't Ronaldo taking that? Like, I have no idea. And also, that also reminds me, you mentioned the celebration for the penalty. Look, I think Arteta is trying to instill some sort of unity and camaraderie between the team, where you've seen that before, where teams and like defenders and goalkeepers, they celebrate like massive clearances or saves as if it was a goal. I know Ramsdale didn't save it, and like it was it was a miss. It wasn't a save. I don't mind the celebration, because at the end of the day, it's the game is locked at 2-1. We're under immense pressure, and it's a big moment. Now, it could have obviously went against Ramsdale straight away had Bruno scored a 20 meter or 30 meter like screamer. Then Bruno's pretty much going up to him like Van Nistelrooy and like celebrating in his face. But when I haven't watched it back again, so I'm only really going off memory on what so I think it was Danny Murphy mentioned, like when he watched it back, Ramsdale, it looked like he was about to go and celebrate in his face, but he sort of stopped himself and he just started celebrating like and facing into the ground and doing that sort of like double-handed fist bump or whatever it is. So so it looked like he stopped himself from directly going up into his face, look, some would argue it's excessive, some might not. Had he have saved it, then 100%, I'll agree that he should celebrate like that. But because he didn't save it and it was a miss, that's
exactly where I take issue with it.
Maybe.
That's the only part, like because you're bringing up the tackles and clearances, and I get why they get celebrated because defenders don't get to celebrate goals very often, and those interventions are like, well, they're saving goals, but you actually did something. That's the part there I take issue. The part where it's because they messed up, it's like, oh, come on, like let's just play and like the game's not over. Yeah, that's another thing I'm thinking. Like, and I don't know if you wanted to wrap up, if you had anything else to say. But
Look, I'll just finish up with like it wasn't like it wasn't like Ramsdale was doing that Dudek sort of like on the line sort of movements to
Yeah, the
try and
wobbly knees,
yeah, it wasn't
the
like
grovel arms.
if he was at least doing that and he went the wrong way, then fair enough. Like him doing movements may have put
Yeah.
off, but he wasn't even doing that. But yeah, just to wrap it up, I do think we rode our luck in regards to the amount of opportunities that we presented United, especially in that second half. But overall, I think over the whole 90 minutes, I think we had control for maybe like up to 2/3. So not directly 2/3, but up to 2/3. I think we had control of the game. But the 1/3 that we didn't have control, it was massively uncontrolled. Like if I go back to the United Liverpool game, you guys didn't have control for that 15-minute spell in the second half, but it wasn't like United were putting you under massive pressure. It was sort of like it was you dealt with the amount of control that you allowed United to have, whereas this was United asserting control, even though we were trying to not allow them to control it. If you get what I'm saying, but
Yeah.
yeah. Overall, we got the result which we needed. We didn't drop 6 points to United. We only dropped 3 for the season, which is good. And yeah, it puts us in a very, very good spot for the top 4 race, considering Tottenham dropped points against Brentford, and we can dive into that game. And I'm not sure if you watched it or not, but all I can say is
Well, before
yeah.
we move on, I just wanted to go into the catalog and what I saw in the game,
Yeah,
because
go
this
ahead.
game, in terms of talking about controversy for the United Arsenal game, I felt like there was a lot. Now, in the before you guys got your penalty for the second goal, and I'll address that in a minute, but there was, for me, what was a clear Cedric handball in the box. I mean, I don't care that he's falling over. He clearly knows where the ball is, and he intentionally falls in a manner that stops the ball as Sancho has the ball under control and is running past him. The fact that the game wasn't stopped by VAR and the ref told you got to have a look at this, I thought was ridiculous, because that for me was a definite penalty and definitely enough to overturn that decision. And then obviously, I don't think in the game when we were watching it, or when it was being televised, you didn't see a replay of that until after Arsenal had scored from the penalty spot. So that tells you that in that moment, I know you said that you thought Arsenal were on top going into the second goal. I didn't think that. I thought United were having their moments. I think they hit the bar through Dallo. I thought they looked good on the counter attack. Second half, when they had their spell, they were pushing more. In the first half, they more wanted to sit back, and the fact that they concede that goal in 2 minutes is a real killer for them. But they still had moments on the counter attack. I thought the first half was pretty even, to be fair. I think you're definitely right about that spell in the second half, that was the most dominant either team were when United were on top then. But for the second goal as well, that's a tough one. I don't know if there's enough in that Tellez challenge to overturn. And then I thought Nketiah was offside for that. So that one, I can see it. I don't gripe with it too much, not as much as the Cedric one not being given. Um, and what am I? And then I think there was and then the luck part was the Ronaldo tied offside. But you can't complain with that, because whenever you see VAR, it's down to the lines. I feel like there might have been another one that I might be missing, but definitely that sequence was match changing. Where I guess maybe it wasn't, because Ronaldo scored straight after the second goal, but that Ronaldo goal straight after your second goal to me felt like justice, because I thought United should have had a penalty to make it 1-1, and rather it goes up the other end and they're 2-1 down through a decision I won't say is completely wrong, but it's contentious at the least. And the ref did not give a penalty in that moment, or didn't see it as a foul. So for that to have enough to overturn, I thought it's pretty wrong as well. because I didn't think it was enough to overturn on that.
Look, with that second goal, I think the ref was pretty much played advantage because it did fall to Nketiah and Nketiah put it away. Yes, he was in an offside position, but then you need to then go back to, was there a foul on Saka? And I think that there was enough there because it did look like it was a push in the back and a tangle of the legs. So if you're not going to give the goal because it's offside, you then need to go back to, was there a foul, which they did go back to it. And you mentioned the Cedric handball. Now I can see why it wasn't given, and I can understand people arguing for it to be given. And the notion is that when a player is falling, and I think this is like apparently the letter of the law, if a player is in fall and he needs to obviously brace himself with his hands, otherwise he's falling on his face. If the ball strikes the hand as he's placing his hand, then it won't be given. And with that, it's hard for refs, even VAR, to argue what the player's intention was. And you need to give the benefit of the doubt to the player, I think, in those instances. You can argue that Cedric did it on purpose because he knew, I guess, the travel of the ball and stuff. And they look here. Here they didn't show any angles of it. They did replay it, but they didn't show any angles to see where the hand was. In the angle that they did show, it looked like the hand was either just on the line or it was just on the outside the box. I'm not sure what the rule is if the hand is on the line, if that's considered inside the box.
Yeah, that would be a penalty.
Yeah.
On the line is inside the box.
Yeah, so because we didn't see replays from a different angle, or I didn't, I'm not sure if any other broadcasters showed it from different angles. I guess the only argument that you can make is that the hand wasn't inside the box. It looked like it was inside the box, but it wasn't inside the box, and that's why they didn't go back to it. That's plus the whole letter of the law with the player falling down and having to brace himself.
I think you hit the nail on the head with the letter of the law, because I do remember that from post-match now that you bring it up, how they said if the hand's planted on the ground, it can't be. In that case, they need to look at changing that law because that's ridiculous. And if a referee can't tell, you can't obviously tell 100% intention, but if you can't make an educated estimate of what a player's intention is, you shouldn't be refereeing football, because you've got to understand football and footballers' mentalities to make informed decisions on what should be a penalty and what shouldn't be. And in that moment, you can 100% see that Cedric knows what he's doing in that moment. But as you say, he's probably been saved by that letter of the law one. The other two, well, obviously we've already addressed the offside, which you brought up the point about Lindelof standing there, and I was thinking that was the only thing that you could maybe justify it with. But the fact was, you were still saying words like, if Nketiah wasn't there, Lindelof would have been there. But the fact is, Nketiah was there, and he was obstructing De Gea before Lindelof was. So Lindelof might have been in a more crouched position, leaning more to the left, which would have meant De Gea didn't have to peer around and then all of a sudden dive to the other way. So that's all ifs and buts. So as soon as it's if, I think you've got to give it the other way, because it's like, no, the fact is he is standing there, he's offside, and De Gea does have to look around him and he's looking at the wrong way. It clearly impedes him by him being there. And the other one, which I don't know why we didn't get more replays of it. Again, not more replays, was I think Tavares brought down Sancho right on the edge of the box, but that one looked like it could easily, and the ref didn't give a foul, which I couldn't believe he didn't even give a foul. But it looked like one of those ones where it continued on to at least the line, where I thought we probably could look at this a bit more forensically. If we're going to do all the offside VAR checks and stuff like this, why aren't we looking at this forensically? Did that contact carry on into the box? So yeah, all in all, I thought United were hard done by, but that's football sometimes, and often you see it when when a team's not playing well or low on confidence, even when they do try to have a bounce back and do try to put in the right effort, the things within the game, the moments you need luck, they go against you, and we saw that for United definitely in this game.
Look, I can't remember the Sancho incident off the top of my head, so I can't comment on that one. But yeah, look, I'll say that in one or two instances, Ronaldo. It seems like United is Ronaldo at the moment. United probably were. They can probably feel a little bit hard done by, but yeah, at the same time, like we've touched on, I guess, those contentious talking points, and I guess we've examined as to why they were given or why they weren't given. So and I just want to touch on that the third goal. I haven't seen from the camera angles that I got. It didn't really look like Nketiah was directly in front of De Gea. So, and like maybe if they showed like bird's eye view or something like that, then you could probably see. But they showed like these side sort of angles, so like you were assuming that he was in front of him, but maybe he wasn't like directly in front of him. Maybe he was like half a meter to his left. So I think when he did peer to the right, I think he was actually peering around Lindelof. That's what it looked like from the angle that they showed here. So again, that's sort of similar with the Cedric handball. Like maybe if they showed a bird's eye view of the positioning, maybe he was actually peering around Lindelof, and that's why it was given. But it looked like Nketiah was directly in front of him. But like he was probably in front of him more towards slightly to the left, where the ball actually did end up traveling. But because he was already peering to the right around Lindelof, maybe that's why it was given. But yeah, look, I guess like we don't get the benefit of getting those sort of different angle replays and all that stuff. It would be interesting to see, to like relook at that one. To see exactly where the players were standing, I think. But yeah, you think it's time to move on then? We've spent enough time on this game.
Yeah, I have a question related to I have a question related to two clubs.
Mm-hmm.
I'll bring it up now because we won't talk about the other game. But having seen what United, the direction that they're looking to move into next season, obviously with Ten Hag, we all believe it to be a rebuilding project with Rangnick coming out and saying things like we're going to bring in 10 players in the summer. I wanted to bring up a question because I was quite impressed with the highlights I saw of this team, and this team are on a good run as well, and they have been recently backed by a boatload of money. For next season, as it stands, and as we look at the future, do you think Newcastle United have a better chance of finishing top 4 than Manchester United next season?
Next season?
Next season.
It depends how quickly Ten Hag can get the players on board with his philosophy and his play style. Like for instance, with Klopp, he pretty much got the players instantly on board. With Guardiola, instantly got the players on board. It depends whether he can get all those egos on board from the get-go. Then I think Newcastle have more of a rebuild than what United have, because United have the players there. Like we were all saying that they were going to challenge for the title at the beginning of the season with the signings that they made, and I don't know how anyone can say that they didn't say that. So it just depends how quickly Ten Hag can get everyone on board. But at the same time, because he's in a way he's unproven. Like he's only been at Ajax, and I think he was the under-21s coach at Bayern. He doesn't have that resume behind him like a Conte, a Guardiola, a Simeone, a Klopp, where he's a proven winner in one of the big leagues. So if they don't get the results at the beginning, I think that the players can turn against him very quickly, and you'll see a similar season to this season or what we've seen in the last couple of years. Whereas if I just sort of compare that to like Arsenal, the reason why Arteta is, I guess, getting some success is because it's a young squad with a young manager. So, but if that was an older squad with egos, and Arteta came in and he was getting the results that he got, he would be out already. But he's been given that chance because it's a young squad, and United isn't a young squad. So I don't know what if you agree with my positioning
Yeah,
with that.
well, you just, for me, on the Ten Hag appointment, and there's a few interesting things in what you're saying, but you hit the nail on the head at the end. So the first thing that I noticed that was interesting was you said Newcastle have more of a rebuild than Man United. I would argue Newcastle don't have a rebuild. Newcastle are just building. The foundation is leveled out. I don't know how strong the foundation is yet, but early signs are quite good. I think their recruitment, from what I've seen of the signings they've brought in, they have come in and done a great job for them. I thought Eddie Howe has done a good job, and the thing that impressed me most, apart from obviously the recent run of form, is being willing to make decisions like putting Joel Linton in central midfield when you're still in a relegation battle at the time, and seeing the dividends that that's producing, particularly in the game from the weekend where he scored a cracking first goal and he scored a couple of goals in the game. Gimaresh looks like a star in the making. He looks like a really good player. I know Trippier got injured, but he came in and he looked to offer them something while they were still battling relegation. So early signs for that foundation for Newcastle are good. Whereas United rebuild is 100% the right word. And it's almost like United have to, and if it is a rebuild for United, because there was another interesting thing you said, about how, and we touched on it in the last pod, about how we thought that United had a squad capable of challenging for the title this season. So the question now as well, because it almost feels like the playing squad gives you one philosophy, but the managerial appointment gives you a different philosophy. How are they going to blend that together? And so that's why rebuild is the perfect word for United, if indeed that is the way it goes. And it feels like ground zero after a disaster or something like that, where at United this season has been a disaster. And now if it's a rebuild, they have to clear all of that debris and that damage out of that squad. And that's going to take time in itself before the foundation is even leveled to go on and then mount top four challenges. Whereas for me, Newcastle feel like they're far more set to go and buy players this summer. I still don't think the reputation is obviously not of a United level. But I mean, that could hurt United because the reputation for United after this season, I don't know what player wants to go there. And then you see the way Newcastle are finishing the season. Now you might actually have a decision to make between the two clubs. Because now that Newcastle could offer you whatever money United were going to offer you, now you have a decision to make. So, look, I'd still put United just ahead, but it's basically just on the fact that they wear that uniform and that badge. Because I look at the two positions, and I think I still have more trust in Ten Hag over Howe, just because Howe is inexperienced in terms of challenging for a top four place and with a club with expectations of doing such. Whereas at least Ten Hag had that at Ajax. But that is going to be interesting in terms of Ten Hag. How is he going to get the players on board with his message? And I was reading a quote from one of his former players who said he's very big on the one-on-one time with players and sort of individualizing his coaching to them, which is great. But for a young squad, I don't know how Cristiano Ronaldo is going to take this guy if he starts saying things about it, the technical aspects of his game. I don't know how players who are on these wages, who have these egos at a club like Manchester United, how they're going to take that kind of coaching. Whereas you look at probably coaches like even Simeone, I'll bring up, Conte, I'll bring up, Allegri, I'll bring up, Ancelotti, the guys who have worked with stars, and they know. I think they know to kind of leave these guys alone, but they also know that they have to put the accountability on these guys as stars and as players on this wage. So, look, I just thought it was a really interesting question, and honestly, at this stage, I'm not sure because if Newcastle's recruitment, if they keep getting it right over the summer, I tell you what, I'd I'd probably back them to finish above United. Well, we got to see what happens in the summer, but I just thought that was interesting. An interesting question with those two clubs.
Yeah, look, I think Newcastle definitely look like they have the more set team. It looks like their team is more cohesive. Like United are completely in shambles. And look, I definitely think it's an interesting question, especially now that Newcastle have essentially a bottomless pit of money. Depending on how all of the financial regulations will play on their recruitment, who knows whether they can actually get the players that they want. They could technically bring in Mbappe, but would Mbappe really go to United, especially Newcastle United?
Bit early for that, I think.
Yeah, if they actually got it, had, for instance, in a parallel universe, if they got Champions League qualification this season, I think Mbappe would be number one on their list. But they know because they don't have Champions League, they can't get him. And I think Mbappe probably would consider it because he'd be like, okay, I'm going to be the highest paid footballer in history because they have a bottomless pit. But yeah, Mbappe is going to go to Real most likely. So yeah, look.
I think the most recent reports were that he was going to stay at PSG.
Oh really? That's definitely interesting.
But it's obviously a fluid situation, so we'll see how that one develops.
Yeah, we'll see how that one goes. But yeah, like I think next, I think it'll go the way that I've predicted. Like if Ten Hag can get those players on board. But yeah, like you mentioned, will his style be? Will it get the attention of the Ronaldos, the Varans who've already won World Cups, European Championships, Champions Leagues? Will he be able to get them on board? Because they're probably the ones that run the dressing room. The younger ones, 100%, they'll want to learn from him. So, yeah, it will be interesting to see how they go next season. And I'll just touch on the Gamera's signing. I think Arsenal are actually in for him, and it's a shame that we couldn't get him because he did look like a good player when he was at Lyon. So yeah, that's another one missed out on for our midfield, unfortunately. But yeah, we'll see how Newcastle's recruitment goes through. And you know what's will actually be interesting? Depending on who takes over at Chelsea, will Newcastle actually be able to replace Chelsea in that sort of rich club list as well? Will be that I think will be the real question, because United, although they're not performing on the pitch, they still, for now, they still do have that prestige around the club badge. But that looks like it could be getting lost if they keep performing the way that they do. Like, players won't want to play for the badge anymore because they're just not performing on the field.
Yeah, no, I think we've hit. I think you wanted to go to Tottenham and Brentford.
Yeah, just quickly. I just want to touch on that because it is another top four match. And did you watch the game or no?
I had it on in the background, but from what I saw of it, it looked like. I know I gave a half-assed sort of preview in the last pod, but it almost looked that way, that it turned out to be that way. I know they had on the team sheet Brentford lining up in a 4-3-3. That wasn't the case at all. It was a 5-3-2. They weren't ultra defensive, but obviously the nature of having five at the back or three centre-backs means that your channels are clogged up. And it's the second game in a row, I believe, that Tottenham failed to get a shot on target in the game. So they've completely lost control of that fourth place. Arsenal have it back, and what a difference a couple of weeks and a couple of results make in football.
Yeah, and I think coming out of this game, Brentford will be the team that's asking themselves, how did we not win that? I think they hit the post twice as well,
Yeah,
and they had
definitely.
and they definitely had the better chances. And yeah, as an Arsenal fan and I guess a secondary Brentford fan, damn shame they couldn't get the results to help us out. So, but like, look, it's only 2 points difference with the London derby still to play.
Yeah.
So if Tottenham win, all right. So if Arsenal win every game but the derby, and Tottenham win every game, including the derby, Tottenham go ahead. So it's similar to, it's almost similar to the Liverpool City race where both teams need to win every single game. It's just that they're not facing each other in the last 4 or 5 games left. But it's the exact same scenario. Both teams need to win every single match. But yeah, they just have that decider to play amongst them.
I still think that I actually think both of these teams will slip up at some point, even though there's only 5 games left. So I disagree with it. It's a race for something kind of like City Liverpool, but the standard is not win every game, because I don't trust either of these teams to win every game on the way in. And obviously they play each other, so they can't. But
yeah,
you know what I mean when I say that. Especially Tottenham at the moment. They've really hit a wall. And the two, I can't. What a massive discrepancy for us, losing those 3 on the bounce to Palace, Southampton, and Brighton, and then winning against Chelsea and United. So very inconsistent teams. So I wouldn't be surprised if both slip up before the end of the season, and we'll see where they lie. But it's an interesting race, definitely.
Well, Tottenham still have to play your lot, and is that at Anfield as well?
Yeah.
Yeah, and they're playing Leicester this weekend, and at Tottenham, and then they play you guys at Anfield, and then they play us. So if they draw against Leicester or lose, and that's a must win for you guys. It's a must win for both games. That's going to be a huge tie.
Yeah.
And obviously, like as we get closer to that, we'll talk in that one about more detail. But like Tottenham could be coming into the London derby with that top 4 race already done and dusted if they drop points against Leicester and you guys. So, and then
definitely. I mean, that also depends on Arsenal's ability not to drop points before then as well. So
yeah, exactly. So, and just looking at their run-in, like we have West Ham this weekend, but that's in the middle of a Europa League tie, which we should get the results. We have Leeds, who they're sort of in that relegation battle. And then we have Newcastle, who are safe from relegation, and then we have Everton. But Everton could already be relegated by that game, so they might not have anything to play for but pride. So it could be a dangerous game.
Well, do you have any thoughts on what you saw in the Merseyside derby then? Touching on Everton and touching on the similarities between the race at the top and the race for 4th?
Look, we can go into that one. Did you want to take the reins on that one, or did you want to hear a neutral's perspective on it?
Go neutral first. You tell me what you thought of what you saw.
All right. So I thought that like it was similar. I guess you can sort of bring up some similar points from the Arsenal United game. With there may have been a couple of contentious refereeing decisions, and like why didn't VAR intervene? But I'll bring up the performance in general. I think for those first 60 minutes, Tottenham, Everton, they did quite well with defending and trying to play on the counter. Like they weren't going to play any other way. They can't compete with Liverpool man for man and try to outplay them off the park. So they were obviously going to park or 9 players, and then have Richarlison as a trying to pressure Fabinho and the centre backs. But they were always going to play that way, and I thought they actually played pretty well for those 60, 65 minutes until the first goal fell, and they probably had the better chances. I believe the stat was that you guys didn't even have a shot on target, let alone on goal in the first half, if I'm not mistaken. And that, I guess that goes to show that Everton did put in a performance, but those substitutions from Klopp, like it. I'm trying to make a comparison. Oh yeah, the comparison I guess is to United, how they had those sort of utility players that come in to play their role for like a game or two in a season. Like with Divock Origi, he's only played like 100 minutes this season, so he's played a game and 10 minutes all up. In the Premier League, I think. So, and he pops up with his first touch. It's sort of an assist. I think in hockey it would be given an assist because the pass before the assist is given as an assist. So in hockey terms, that's an assist that he comes up with for that first goal, and then he scores the second goal. So he changed him and Diaz as well, because I think Diaz assisted the second goal. But him and Diaz, like, they changed the game. And I remember with United, like,
and also on the second goal, Henderson crossed the ball in as well.
Yeah, and he came
on your Klopp point.
Yeah, and
it was just it's interesting because just before you go, it's interesting because, like, I'd say probably a year or two ago, and it's probably a testament to Liverpool's squad depth, but a big criticism on Klopp was that he waited way too long to make substitutions, and sometimes he wouldn't make substitutions when the game needed changing, but this season, he's probably the best manager at making substitutions that change games, because it's happened countless times in the last couple of months. So I just wanted to touch on that.
Yeah,
before you go on.
And it sort of reminds me of like when Ferguson used to bring on like his substitutions. Like he'd bring on like Hernandez and stuff, and Hernandez would like pop in with a goal off the bench like almost every single time he'd come on. And like he's the one player that comes to mind as like the one that's fresh in the mind. But I'm sure there was other players as well that would sort of fill in as like those
Solskjaer.
Solskjaer as well. And then I'm sure I think there was other like midfield players as well that would come in. For some reason, Park Ji-sung comes in, but he played quite a bit from memory, like in that midfield. Like he would start games. He wouldn't necessarily be a bench player, but Hernandez was he was known as that bench player that would come on and give a goal and change the game. And it seems like Klopp is starting to get those sort of results out of his players, like whether he brings on Jota or whether, I know in this game he didn't bring him on, but like whether he brings on Jota, whether he brings on Diaz, whether he brings on Salah, even has come on off the bench and sort of influenced games as well. Origi has also influenced games off the bench, and he has that in his toolkit where he has players that play a handful of minutes or a handful of games, but when he brings them on, they're not just giving 100%, they're giving 150%. Like they know their role. They're not down on motivation or anything like that. They're not down on form. They come in and they do the job, most because they love and respect the manager and the club, and they're going to give it their all. They're not going to be sooks that come off the bench, which we're seeing with some other clubs where if the players don't get their way, then they're going to down tools. Like no Liverpool players down tools, and that's down to having a fantastic manager. I don't know if you want to come in on that, or whether you want me to go straight into what I thought may have been certain refereeing discrepancies or decisions that I guess went against Everton. If you want me to touch on that, and then you can have your say on everything.
I'm guessing you want to talk about the Gordon penalty claim in the second half and Mane hands to the face in the brawl.
Yeah. So. Look, with that, I'll bring up the I guess brawl in talking marks or in quotation marks, football brawl.
Yeah.
It's not one of those like NBA,
The handbags. The handbag brawl.
It's nothing compared to the NBA in the 80s and 90s. But yeah, like with that, I guess it's similar to why VAR didn't intervene in that Atletico City game to send off Savage, because Savage, I think he headbutted Sterling or someone, which wasn't picked on by the ref. The ref gave him a yellow for pushing Foden off the pitch, but he didn't give him a yellow for the headbutt on Sterling. I think it was Sterling or Jesus. So, and why didn't VAR pick up that? So why isn't VAR picking up multiple yellow card incidences? Because the ref saw, I think, the first one where he put the hand on the face of one of the players, but then he turned his back when I think he almost poked a player in the eye, and like again, it's a hand to the face. And I guess like if we're talking about this outside of the realm of football, we're like this is nothing. Like, or it's pretty much nothing. Like in just like I guess even in normal everyday life, you don't want people touching your face, but in the grand scheme of things, like it's not. Is it? If you compare that to a Roy Keane tackle, is that really worthy of a yellow card? Putting your hands on someone's face, or like putting your finger on their cheek and like pushing them away. By the letter of the law, yes, it is a yellow card, and sometimes it's even like a red card. I think if you put your hand on their neck, I think. So why didn't VAR say, "Hey, you missed this other yellow card decision. This player should be sent off because he made in the same sequence of the brawl."
It can't be for yellow card offences.
I know.
A straight red.
I know. But that's where maybe they should slightly change VAR, because I know that, and I watched the post.
No more power to VAR. No more power to VAR. We need to limit VAR's power.
Okay, but let me try and finish my point though, because from one perspective, VAR should be there to help referees make decisions, and I know the role of VAR is to come in on red card decisions and like major decisions, and I know that yellow cards aren't necessarily a major decision, but like if a player is causing multiple offenses in the same sequence, then why should he be getting away with this? Especially now that we have technology to help, and we've seen a player, Martinelli, in the same sequence of play get double yellow carded, albeit for two different offenses. One was a tackle, one was a push on a player taking a throw. But in the same sequence, he got two yellows. And yes, the ref saw both, so he didn't need VAR to give it. But that's my contention. Like, why isn't VAR stepping in to help the referee? You're saying we shouldn't be giving more power to the referee, but we should be saying, okay, I can't remember who the ref was, but ref, go and look at the monitor. We'll show you what you missed, at least. Not, hey, you need to give a yellow card to this player. Hey, have a look at this. That's all. Before I hand it over to you to give your thoughts on everything, the penalty shout. It's almost a similar push or entanglement to the Saka one that was given the day before, where when I saw the replays again, it did look like Gordon got slightly in front of him, so it wasn't exactly shoulder to shoulder. It was a little bit in the back, and then obviously the legs tangled as well. I can see why it wasn't given. I can see why it would have been given. For me, and I think I was watching it with the broadcast with Carragher, Kevin Campbell, and Souness. All three of them said that was a penalty, and that should have been given.
Yeah, I heard that.
Yeah, so if you have, I think Mike, but then another post match, I think Michael Owen said for him it wasn't a penalty. So, and he's a striker. But again, he's a Liverpool fan, and I guess like Carragher and Souness are Liverpool fans, and they said it was. So everyone has sort of different decision or different perspectives on it. For me, because it's so similar to the Saka one, I think it should have been given because it did look like Gordon did get across him. But I guess the reason why it wasn't given is because I think Gordon had like, he got a yellow card in the first half for a dive.
Yeah.
And that was probably playing on the ref's mind.
Yeah.
And then I think there might have been another incident where he tried to play the ref, but it wasn't as obvious as that first one that he got yellow carded on. And he did have a couple of those sort of like diving incidences, moments in the game where he's trying to dupe the ref, and the ref, I guess, is saying, I'm having none of it. So he's going to be more harsh on him because of that. Because like he's trying to insult the ref's intelligence and stuff. So I guess the referee sees it as that. But I guess it wasn't clear, again, for VAR, it wasn't clear and obvious for that to be given, or for VAR to intervene to check. If it was given, VAR wouldn't have checked. Like, they wouldn't have said, hey, we think you got this wrong. If it wasn't given, again, we saw VAR didn't intervene. So, yeah, it's a bit of a 50-50 one, and I think you might argue that it looked like Gordon was heading to the line anyway, so he wasn't going to go in on goal. So, like, but yeah, my one on that is that I believe it should have been given, but I can 100% understand why it wasn't given, because it's probably a 55%, for me, 55% penalty decision for me. Not a 50-50. It's a slightly more of a penalty than it's not a penalty. So I'll give the reins over to you as a resident Liverpool fan and expert.
I agree. I agree with what you said about the Mane one, where it's like there's this minimal amount of contact to the face. Is that even worthy of a yellow card? You got to judge that on its merits and intentions. But I agree that, like, I think ultimately the right decision was made not to send him off, because there's no force. He's barely even pushing the face away, really. It's just the hands are raised. But the thing I will say is, as soon as you do that, you give referees an opportunity to send you off. I don't know what goes through your mind as a player when you get into an opponent's face with either your head or your hand. Why the hell are you doing it? Just get the hell away from that situation. And when you're getting paid that much money to be professional footballers, you've got to have more sense than that. So if he does get sent off, that's one of those ones where I would blame my player before I blame the referees for that. But I totally agree that when you look at that isolated incident, is it even worthy of hardly any punishment? And thankfully, that was one of the incidences where the Everton players didn't actually make too much of it, because if that was Richarlison, he'd still be rolling around the floor. But yeah, so I agree with how you summarized that. The Gordon one, well, the good thing was I already got onto the record with my assertion that I didn't think Saka should have even got a penalty for his one against Tellez, because I think you're right to bring up those two situations where you look at the touch, like Gordon's going to the byline. Saka's touch, you could argue, is getting away from him, and it's lucky that Nketiah is there. And then there's sort of this, they kind of get in front, and then there's a tangling. There's a little bit of a hand on the shoulder or whatever it is. My opinion on that is you got it 100% right, and I think it was already playing on the ref's mind in terms of Gordon going down and getting that yellow card in the first half. Also, I just can't stand when attacking players think, and often they're right in thinking it because the ref will give a foul or a penalty, but think that all they have to do is get in front of the defender and then just fall over. Because if you do that, if you get in front of a defender and then fall over, there's obviously naturally going to be contact, and there's naturally going to be a tangling of legs if you're already on your way down. So when I look at that Gordon one, I think I see Matip sort of trying to feel where Gordon is, but with his hand coming across, he's not actually applying force. He's just feeling where the attacker is. And then I think as soon as attackers feel anything, even if there's no force to it, they've started just chucking themselves. Well, not started, it's been around for ages, but they just chuck themselves to the ground. I think refs need to be smart enough not to reward that kind of shit. Because for me, a penalty needs to be hard earned. A penalty is a great chance to score a goal, and goals in football change matches. So while I could understand if that was given, I think you're right in around a 50-50 whether that's given or not. I just can't stand seeing attackers doing that. And the fact that he already got booked for diving, I thought it was justice that they didn't get that decision, to be quite honest. Although I could understand it if it was given and there wasn't enough to overturn that and say it wouldn't be a penalty if the decision went the other way. So I guess that's my thoughts on the decisions. In terms of the game, I thought the atmosphere was maybe like a couple of percent more subdued after we got to witness what City did the day before and beat Watford so convincingly. I think we all expected them to beat Watford, but they got their goals. They got Ruben Diaz back, so and then obviously a win like that we saw with Chelsea going to Southampton and winning big, and then giving him belief to go to the Bernabeu and play really well. So that just gives City more belief because I thought they would sort of hit a sludgy patch before that, to be fair. So now that they've put 5 past Watford, maybe they have more belief in their ability to score goals and keep rolling to the end of the season. Having said that, obviously this Liverpool, even the supporters, but the Liverpool team in particular, isn't going to be one to give up the fight until it's mathematically over. So, but I just thought it was interesting where the atmosphere for a Merseyside derby, particularly in the first half, was just a bit subdued. I think that played into it. Obviously, I think Everton's tactics played into it a lot. They frustrated. They did well with what their game plan was. But as Klopp always says, it's a lottery when you defend your box that deep, and then eventually we just prodded a ball into the box again. Origi laid it back for Salah, and they lost the lottery on that occasion as Salah picked out Robertson at the back post. And when you play like that, eventually you got to think eventually that's going to happen if a team asks enough questions. So it was a nervy game. It felt like a banana skin for the first half. But ultimately, I mean, much like Lewandowski loves to go to torment his old club in Dortmund, well, we got Origi who loves to torment Everton, apparently. He doesn't play all season, and then he comes in and just scores important goals, usually against Everton. And Klopp was full of praise after the game for him, but it just felt like a relegation team playing a top team. And the top team won, as you'd expect them to do. And we roll on, still 1 point the difference. So in terms of the game, I didn't see too much else other than that, but it definitely felt like it could have been a 0-0 or a draw, but eventually Liverpool just prodded through, and 1 point the difference it remains.
Yeah, it didn't seem like a game where you can really overanalyze it or analyze it too much. So it was pretty much just I think Everton had like 17% possession at the end of the game.
Yeah, crazy.
So it's you can't and it's only really like Liverpool trying to put in crosses, trying to play in and around the box, and other than that, like you can only really analyze. We spent like 10-15 minutes on like I spent 10-15 minutes on the refereeing decisions or possible refereeing decisions. But the game in itself, like, Everton had, in the first half, I think they had like 2 counter-attacks that they could have done better with. But other than that, they defended well up until the goal. They frustrated Liverpool, and it wasn't, there's not really too much to talk about. It's a shame that going into the game, Everton were dropped into the bottom 3. So,
I was going to say that's definitely something to talk about. That Everton are now bottom 3.
Yeah, and like they're 2 points behind Burnley, albeit with a game in hand. But Burnley look like they have some form behind them, especially after getting rid of
they got
Dyche.
the bounce from Dyche. Yeah, from Dyche going, they've definitely got the bounce.
But looking at Everton's run-in, like they have Chelsea. They have Chelsea this weekend at home. They have Leicester away. They have Watford, where you expect them to get 3 points. They have Brentford at home, and the way Brentford are playing, unless they dip, I don't see Everton winning that. They might get a draw, perhaps, but I expect them to lose that more than to win that. Crystal Palace at home. Again, I can't see Everton winning that. I can see a draw or a loss. I can't see a win. And Arsenal away for the end of the season. So I can only really see them picking up 5 points maximum from their remaining fixtures. And that's a win against Watford, a draw against Brentford, and a draw against Crystal Palace. I can't see them beating Leicester at home. Leicester being at home. So, and I can't see them beating Arsenal at the Emirates either, especially if Arsenal have to win that game to secure top 4. I can't see them winning that. So 5 points from their remaining 6 fixtures is what I predict, which will put them on 34. So that's only 3. If Burnley were to lose all their games, it's only 3 points above them. But Burnley have Watford, so both teams have to play Watford. They have Watford, they have Aston Villa, Tottenham. They have Aston Villa twice, so I guess that's a rescheduled game. And then they have Newcastle. So Burnley have the easier run-in by the looks of it, and they probably only need to pick up 2 wins out of those 5 fixtures to really secure it.
Definitely be tight, and Everton are in big trouble. That's going to be really interesting to see. I think Leeds might even be close to that bottom 3 as well. So both those teams, like Everton and Burnley, having games against Watford, you've got to say they're crucial for both teams.
Yeah. Look, Leeds are already on 34 points, so they're 5 points above with 1 game extra. So I think Leeds only need to really win 1 more game to secure Premier League. But they have City, they have Arsenal, they have Chelsea, Brighton, and Brentford. So Brighton and Brentford is probably where they might pick up some points. So they need a win out of one of those 2 games to secure it. So Leeds only need 3 more points, whereas Everton need 9 points. I think they need 9 points to secure it, but I can only see them really getting 5 points.
I don't know what it's going to take and who's going to stay up in the Premier League, but I do know that all this talk about relegation is getting quite depressing. So I think we should move across to the continent, and we had two champions definitively crowned this weekend in PSG and Bayern Munich, and one pretty much unofficially crowned in Real Madrid. And he got 1 more point, I believe. Barcelona to drop any points. So, obviously in the Bundesliga, I know we both watched the first half of the Klassiker, and I thought it was fitting that Bayern were able to wrap up the league title against Dortmund, with Dortmund having to endure them celebrating at the Allianz, because I didn't think Dortmund deserved much from this season. And that's 10 in a row for Bayern now, which is just ludicrous. And I know Bayern are a great team, but at what point do we just switch off from the top of German football? Because 10 in a row is excessive. And as we've seen this season, Bayern didn't have what it took to go deep into the Champions League. So, but on the same hand, I'm torn when assessing the Bundesliga, because you also have 2 semi-finalists in the Europa Leagues, which suggests that what's just below those top 2 teams isn't bad at all. So it's interesting, but I mean, I don't think there's any fix to it. Bayern are just a supremely smart model in terms of how they and they make sure that no one can challenge them. And I know all top clubs across the line. I don't want to just single out Bayern, and I don't want to see the Bundesliga as a farmers' league, as people might want to say. But I mean, we need to get a different winner in there soon. or at least a challenge. I mean, wasn't even a challenge put up this season. So obviously, congratulations to Bayern. I know I've been down on them in recent weeks. They're obviously still a top club in Europe. And when I'm down on them, I'm picking hairs and I'm splitting hairs in their performances. But it's not the vintage of Bayern. The most interesting thing on Bayern is when you look at the team that won the 2020 Champions League final. They still had Jerome Boateng and David Alaba as the two centre backs, and now they don't have either of them. And obviously, Sula's leaving in the summer for Dortmund, which might move the needle a bit for Dortmund. But Bayern, for me, need to get that centre of the defence sorted. And I've said it over and over again, but yeah, I didn't. There wasn't much to watch in the game, really. Dortmund somewhat just let go of the rope. They haven't been able to find defenders for weeks now, and yeah, like I said, fitting. I don't know if you have any thoughts on Bayern winning yet another title, the 10th consecutive.
No, not really. Like it was, I guess it was expected. The only thing that I'll say to that is like you mentioned, also PSG won their, I think it's their 10th title overall, but not
Yeah,
in a
yeah,
row.
it is.
But weren't PSG founded in? If I'm not, were they founded in '92, or am I thinking of another club that was founded in '92? Or so they're a relatively new club, aren't they? Or like they were refounded in '92. For some reason, that springs to mind. I'm not sure if I'm thinking of another club or if I'm completely off the ball with that one. But if they're only 30 years old, that's a pretty good achievement. Like winning 10 titles in 30 years as a brand new club. If that's true, I think there's something there with that story. But again, might be completely off. But I guess the difference between
Wiki has them at 1970.
okay, maybe it was something else with nine. Maybe they won their first title in '92. But if I'm comparing like Bayern and PSG, and they were finalists two years ago in the Champions League, even though Bayern completely dominate their league, they can back it up to an extent in the Champions League. I know they lost to Villarreal, which was a shock result, but they're pretty much always, at least the last 5 to 10 years, they've pretty much always been around the semi-final area, if not in the final. So they pretty much always get to the semi-final. So they're backing up those results in the Bundesliga by being a top club in the Champions League as well, whereas PSG, they're faltering in the Champions League. So I think that's more testament to how strong the German league is compared to the French league, at least. So, and you also touched on two German semi-finalists in the Europa League. So that's like that middle of the table, being so strong that they're competing with the rest of Europe, at least in that league. They're competing with the middle table European teams from other top leagues. So yeah, congratulations to both teams. I guess like it's still no easy feat winning a league title. Like it's a marathon, and you need to get through it. So yeah, congrats to both.
Yeah, you're right there. It's definitely not an easy feat, and the Bundesliga is not an easy league, despite the fact that Bayern have been able to win 10 in a row. And you're definitely right in the fact that obviously 6 times champions of Europe, compared to PSG not having won it yet. But you can't. It's almost disrespectful to Bayern Munich to have PSG compared with them, just given the history of Bayern Munich and the things they've accomplished in their history compared to PSG, who are, for all intents and purposes, about 10 years old, really, as this version of themselves. But yeah, it will be nice to at least see a title challenge next season in the Bundesliga. Hopefully, maybe Leipzig can continue on their trajectory and Dortmund can sort out their problems. But in all honesty, you'd expect Bayern to still get stronger in the summer. Probably make it 11 next season. So, um, moving across to a league where the title is still very much up in the air, and really now it's limited to 2 teams that it's up in the air for, and they are the 2 Milan teams. And in this round of fixtures, we saw both the Milan teams play against both the Rome teams in Lazio and Roma. Inter were able to dispose of Roma quite comfortably. I thought this game was a great illustration of how a good five at the back looks compared to an average five at the back. And what makes Inter's five at the back a good five at the back for me is the balance that they're able to accomplish in the fact that they can put Perisic as the left wing back, and for most of his career, Perisic has been a winger. He has the characteristics of a winger. He's played as a winger in his development. So really, when you look at Perisic, you say that guy's a winger, but they play him as a wing back, and he does his job. In playing a winger as a wing back, now you play the more defensive left back behind him in his name escapes me at the moment. It'll come to me later, but he's a left-footed, would play as a left back, as a defensive left back in any normal 4-4-2 behind Perisic, and now on the other side. And got to have a quick mention. Well, obviously they have Skriniar and De Vrij at the back, which is a really strong centre back, I guess, quotation marks, partnership, even though it's a three at the back, because they're the true centre backs of the team. And Skriniar's world class. He's right near that top tier. I want to see him play in a back four for me to really put him in the top tier, but he's outstanding. And the other outstanding one is Denzel Dumfries at right wing back. To lose Hakimi in the summer and maybe get a player who's maybe better than him in, or is certainly I've been more impressed watching Dumfries this season than I have been Hakimi for PSG, especially after Vinicius tore him in that 30-minute comeback at the Bernabeu. And Hakimi shouldn't be getting torn by anyone because his physical gifts are so immense that no player should be running in behind him, but he was repeatedly gotten in behind by Vinicius in that game. But Denzel Dumfries, his ability to get up and back in that wing-back position, he scored the first goal, made an underlapping run, made a run of a striker to score that goal, in fact. But he's one of those rare players who can get so far forward, but his energy and his physicality allows him to get back as well. So, and then obviously within that, you have Brozovic, who plays as a holding midfield but doesn't have to play as a holding midfielder because they play five at the back. So he has a bit more license to go and link up and even get involved in the attacks. And then you've got Barella and Çalhanoğlu on either side, who really are attacking midfielders. They're number 10s, really. But because you're playing five at the back, they also have more freedom in the midfield to make overlapping runs. But he gets them to do their defensive work. And whereas you look at Roma, they're playing really three centre-backs as their three centre-backs. So there's no balance of someone who's a bit more adept at defending the spaces down the sides and playing with the ball more like a fullback would. And then the wing backs are fullbacks, really. They're not really attack minded wing backs. They're guys who can play in a back four. So yeah, for me that game just highlighted the difference between what a good five at the back looks like versus an average five at the back. And Milan dramatically were able to get a 2-1 win at Lazio with a last-minute goal from Tonali. And Lazio, I thought, as any Sarri team, really, when you watch them, it's moments of great going forward, but it's flimsy at the back. And that's what it proved to be. They took an early lead through Immobile. Good cross from Milinkovic-Savic. They looked good for 20 minutes, Lazio. And then I guess Milan... Lazio showed why they're in the position they are, I think 6th or 7th, and looking fragile at the back compared to Milan, who were going for the title. And they were able to show their class in the rest of the game. Ibrahimovic was able to set up Tonali for the winner in the 90th minute, and they roll on. I know Inter are 2 points behind, but have a game in hand. Just touch on Napoli's capitulation. Napoli 2-0 up at Empoli going into the 80th minute, and they inexplicably concede 3 goals in the space of 7 minutes and lose that game, and really absolutely rule themselves out of the Scudetto for this season after such a bright start. No surprise to hear that Koulibaly was missing for this game, so maybe the capitulation has a bit. It can have a bit of an explanation in that, but Serie A is a really interesting race. Like we've probably touched on, it's more akin to a top 4 race in the Premier League, but nonetheless, that along with obviously the Premier League title are the only two are from the big 5 that are interesting going into the stretch. So, and the added spice of it being AC Milan and Inter Milan adds another layer to it. So I think that's just something I wanted to touch on, and it'll be interesting to see that going down the stretch. And I guess now that we've moved across to the continent and we touched on the all but champions in Real Madrid, it would be negligent for us not to mention that Real Madrid in this upcoming midweek against Man City, in which really is the showpiece semi-final of the 2 semi-finals in the Champions League. And I just wanted to get your thoughts on this game going into the first leg, and then obviously we'll touch on Liverpool versus Villarreal.
I think it should be. It's the more interesting tie out of the 2 semi-finals, because we expect Villarreal to sit back now, but whereas like with Man City and Real, we sort of expect them to be a little bit more open, a little bit more expansive, and attack each other with a lot more gusto. Real probably will concede. They will concede a lot of possession, but like I think with the midfield they have, I think they can compete against Man City. Maybe not like for the full 90 minutes, but like in their spurts they can hold possession. So it won't be like a Liverpool Everton where it's like 17% possession, but I think it might be something more like a 60-40, maybe not as low as the 30s. But it's definitely the more interesting tie. I'll keep my contention with or position as previous weeks. I expect City to go through, and at the Etihad they should get the results against Real. So, and I think it's also very interesting that we have like pretty much 2 tactical geniuses with Ancelotti and Guardiola going up against each other. Let's just hope that Guardiola doesn't tinker with the squad too much and have one of those famous, 1 a.m. or 2 a.m. ideas that he's famous for, that completely throws a spanner in the works and ends up screwing over his own team, which I think he's famous for. Because I think there was a story there with back in Bayern, when Bayern faced Real, he had, I can't remember exactly what happened. I can remember the story where, like, in the hotel room the night prior, he had some kind of idea to, I don't know if it was like play three at the back or something like that, and it just absolutely, and so he diverted from what they've been doing the whole season, and it just and I think they end up losing like 4-1 overall, or was it 4-1 just at Allianz that they end up losing, and that was down to him playing something slightly foreign. So let's hope Guardiola sticks to tried and tested methods for this semi-final and even the second leg as well. Otherwise, Real could come away with the result.
Yeah, well, you got to take the good with the bad, I guess, with Guardiola. You can't have a manager who can have all these tactical innovations, like the fullbacks coming in and playing as central midfielders, the different shapes he plays. I know one game at Bayern, he lined up with a 2-3-5, which startled people, but he was simply putting the formation down of how his team would look in possession rather than out of possession by putting a 2-3-5 down on the page. And really, when you're Pep Guardiola and you manage teams who have the lion's share of the ball, why wouldn't you put the formation that you'll be in while you have the ball? Because that's more than likely going to be how you play the game. So So you got to take the good with the bad. He's given us, well, me in particular, tactically analysing so many games gives you so many ideas just by watching how his teams play and what kind of thought processes he has behind the decisions he makes. I think it's a little unfair, the overthinking sort of thing, but at the same time, he knows about it because obviously he makes jokes about it now. So whenever there is criticism, the first thing is you got to think, look, is it warranted? And to some degree, it is warranted because you've lost big games in the previous two versions of the Champions League because you've made changes. Obviously, Lyon sticks to mind, and obviously Chelsea in the final last season, not playing a holding midfielder, also sticks to mind. So, yeah, he's got to learn from that because honestly, City, when they play to their maximum, are better than Real Madrid when they play to their maximum, barring Karim Benzema absolutely lighting on fire like he did at Stamford Bridge. So definitely an interesting tie. I wouldn't put Ancelotti into the tactical genius category anymore. Definitely there was a time where he was, but Ancelotti's main skill, especially at this stage of his career, is his man management and the way he deals with star players who have been there and won that. As you can see from the tune that he's getting out of players like Benzema and Modric this season. Um, so definitely interesting. I expect him to go in there with a 5-3-2 like he did at Stamford Bridge, probably Valverde offering more protection on the right. And then hit on the counter attack, and they have potent weapons on the counter attack. But like I've said before, I think it's important if they're going to get a result at the Etihad that they need Benzema on top form, and then if Vinicius and Modric see Benzema on form, then hopefully they come along with him for the ride. And if those three are on form, then we're going to see them offer problems for Man City on the counter attack. I have no doubt about that, especially with Kyle Walker being injured, and I'm pretty sure João Cancelo is missing the first leg. So definitely a chance for Real Madrid, but they do need the main man to be on top form because he scored 6 of their 7 goals going into this. And as I've pointed out in a previous deep dive, he is all but everything of what Real Madrid are doing. Him and obviously Modric and Vinicius be there as well. Liverpool Villarreal. It's definitely an interesting tie. It's not the tie we wanted, obviously, as football fans. It's probably the tie Liverpool supporters wanted, but my philosophy is when you get to this stage of the Champions League, like, what the hell are you doing here if you don't want to play against the best team? So while it was good to, not good, but it was something different to see Villarreal get past Bayern, especially with me being down on Bayern in week, so feeling a little vindicated there. But look, in all seriousness, as a football fan, you want to see Liverpool play against Bayern Munich really in the semi-final, but alas, we have Liverpool Villarreal, not undeservedly for Villarreal to make it to this stage. And I guess you could say a good thing is that Liverpool just came off the experience of trying to be frustrated in the Merseyside derby. So when I don't expect maybe Villarreal to be ultra defensive in the first leg, or not the first, sorry, in the home leg, which is the second leg, but in the away leg against Liverpool at Anfield, I expect a similar challenge to what Liverpool faced against Everton, really. But obviously, Villarreal will have more weapons on the counter attack, so they're going to have to be wary of them. But yeah, if Liverpool could get an early goal at Anfield, you really think that maybe they could go on and get 2 and 3, and maybe be in a really comfortable position going away to El Madrigal. So, but that like Klopp says, and I've already said it in the podcast, we're almost playing a luck game if Villarreal defend that deep. They probably won't be quite as deep as Everton, but you've got to expect them to go in with those 2 bags of full and look to be really solid, I think, in the first leg.
It's an interesting point that you brought up, how the game against Everton was sort of like a you can sort of look at it as a warm up to how the game could go against Villarreal in terms of Villarreal defending with 10 men behind the ball, and like Liverpool being able to overcome that, not get too frustrated. So that I think is an excellent point, and it could end up actually playing into Liverpool's hands how that fixture list sort of came out, where they verse Everton right before Villarreal. But Villarreal, they're a team in form, I guess, especially in the Champions League, compared to Everton, who are a relegation battler. And Villarreal definitely pose more threats in attack than what Everton do. So, and Liverpool have also shown that because of the high line they play, they are susceptible to that counter attack, which Villarreal can have shown that they can play, and they can play it with pretty good effect as well. So they're going to pose a lot more problems for Liverpool. Just a matter of whether Liverpool can solve those problems and keep it tight at the back. Because I think if Liverpool get the first goal, then it could be pretty much game over. But if Villarreal get it, then they're going to shut up shop, and then as you mentioned, Klopp said, it's pretty much them rolling the dice and having to gamble every time they attack, and eventually the dice falls in your favour. From one perspective, it's an as interesting game as the Man City Real Madrid one. Like, I think if you like a sort of more defensive battle, and like that sort of, like, I guess it would probably be a little bit more relatable to chess. If you like the sort of slow defensive sort of battle, I think this game sort of you'd expect it more from this game, whereas the City Real Madrid game, like I said, it would be more expansive and better for the neutral, whereas this one is better for, I guess, that sort of die-hard tactical person that likes that sort of battle in the minds. If I'm not sure if you agree with me on that or not, but that's sort of the way I'm looking at the two ties.
Well, definitely a mental tactical battle, but I think in terms of football tactics, you'll see more expression in the City Real because I think Ancelotti and Guardiola obviously have shown themselves to be more flexible with tactical changes and adaptations to the other team. Whereas Liverpool and Villarreal, I think Villarreal know that what got them to this point. They know the size of their club in comparison to the other three that are left in, and they know that the moment that Liverpool are in at the moment is arguably the best team in the world. So in terms of the mental tactics, they'll be there. Can Liverpool solve the problems? But in terms of formational style changes, pressing tactics, pressing triggers, everything like that, you're not going to see much discrepancy because Liverpool play the same way and Villarreal are going to do the same things that got them to this point. So definitely an interesting tie, Liverpool-Villarreal, but you've got to expect that excitement levels will be much higher in the Real Madrid-Man City tie. So, yeah, I agree with your assertion that they're both interesting ties. And I'm just looking forward to seeing them, man, because it's good to have the Champions League back.
Yeah, and I can't believe it's actually like tonight. Like it seemed like from the quarterfinals, it's just rolled around so quickly.
It's quick, yeah.
And there was
definitely.
Yeah, and those massive games, like just all round. Like, I know we focus mostly on the Premier League, but like last week we had Liverpool United, Arsenal Chelsea, Arsenal United, Liverpool Everton. We also had West Ham Chelsea, which I know we didn't talk about, but that's I'm not sure either team are really going for anything at the moment. But like those massive games, and then we just going to get two more massive games, and even a third game. I think Chelsea versus United on Thursday, which we can get into on the next pod. I think.
Yeah.
But yeah, like it's like this sort of crunch time towards the end of the season, and like especially these last like week, 2 weeks, like there's just been massive games. And I'm just excited for all this football that's going on.
Yeah, definitely. And like on a side note, this is like sort of the distraction I was talking about in terms of like the Super League, because we've got to this point of the season. We've got some leagues that are over, 3 of the 5. And sometimes the Champions League ties, like you say, like it's almost disbelief that we're at this point of the Champions League, because there's so many distractions offered in league football or cup football or whatever it may be. So I'm not saying I dislike this, but I'm saying maybe like in the Super League format, if we got to this point, because I know the NBA playoffs are on now as well, so I'm ultra distracted. But yeah, if we got to this point and all you had to focus on were those top teams going for the one prize, that would just be an interesting level of scrutiny on those games, kind of like what you get in the NBA playoffs. But yeah, that's just a side note, sort of going back to that Super League point and stuff like that. But definitely looking forward to the semi-finals coming up.
Yeah, 100%. And look, I think we've touched on anything, unless you got anything else to add.
No, I'm happy with what we've discussed, and I'm looking forward to being back later in the week to discuss the 2 ties that we'll see in Europe.
Yeah,
And maybe even a bit of Europa League as well.
Yeah, that too. We have that too as well. Not as big as Champions League, but yeah, still interesting to see what's going to happen there. And just before we wrap up, in this hour and a half, have you thought about any other sports where having an extra limb would be be a disadvantage?
Honestly, I haven't. Yeah, I reckon you have to give me until the one that we have later in the week.
All right.
Pops to mind.
All right. Well, I'll give you a couple of days to think about it. Maybe one or two will pop into your head. One where it would be an absolute advantage. What about darts? Yeah. Like you throw with one hand, you hold a beer with the other, and then the other hand is like used for balancing. So like you can you actually get the full darts experience with the extra arm.
No, that's good. That's good.
All
mean, if you're really skilled, you only need the one for the beer and one for the dart.
Yeah, like that's where true talent comes in. But hey, I guess having an extra hand wouldn't be a disadvantage in that scenario. And look, I think we'll wrap it up on that one on a positive note. And yeah, we'll bring it all back on the next pod to review the Champions League and all the other ties that went through in the Europa League as well. So, Caleb, it's been a pleasure.
It has. Thanks for being here to talk football. Always a pleasure. And I'll talk to you next time.
No worries. Thanks for coming, and bye for now.